and welcome to the Juneteenth 196 2020 special edition. B-HBrilliantMinds Project Inc. is honored to bring to you invited guests who will share their personal stories from past to present. B-HBrilliantMinds Project Inc. understands the importance of leaving a legacy behind after we're gone. We know that we are responsible in keeping our stories alive, creating opportunities for the voices of our communities to be heard and seen. The Juneteenth 196 special 2020 edition captures the essence of why we are celebrating and honoring the backs and shoulders of our ancestors who we are standing on. Their faith, resilience, strength, blood, love, and sweat and tears is the building blocks for the generation to come. We are blowing into the winds of creation as we prepare the brilliant minds of the future towards excellence. This is just a friendly reminder. If you are participating in this session via Zoom or any social media forums, you give the B-HBrilliantMinds Project Inc. the authorization to record you, your voice, and your comments, and take your picture. This evening, we have Dr. Hollis Pierce-Jenkins. And we just want to say thank you, my sister. We appreciate you being here this evening. We know you are very, very busy. Tell the family we said thank you for allowing us to speak with you today with this personal interview. So, Dr. Hollis, my first question for you this evening is, tell me about yourself, your upbringing, your family, and your passion. We know it's a lot all in one, but what I will do is go back and then share with you, if I have to, about what we wanted you to cover. But first of all, tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
You are such a sweetheart, and I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, but I grew up in San Francisco. In 1969, my parents moved to Daly City because the schools in San Francisco were starting to decline in their education, and the Daly City schools were superior at the time. My elementary school in San Francisco was 99% African American. My middle school was a little more diverse, but when we moved to Daly City, I realized for the first time the disparity between the educational quality of the two cities, even though they were only 20 minutes apart.
Wow.
My parents were born in Clayton, Louisiana, and met when they were children. They married at 17, and they were married for 54 years. Even though my upbringing was in the city, I learned about my family in Louisiana. And as the younger family members migrated to the West Coast, I learned about the difference in upbringing and opportunities. In many ways, my cousins had that immigrant mentality, and that they understood the vast difference in obtaining the American dream here on the West Coast that was very different from the South. However, they brought their Southern roots, rituals, and routines that grounded them, even though they were miles away from their origins. My mother was denied the opportunity to attend school beyond high school. She returned to school. She took a correspondence course to become a licensed vocational nurse. She spoke of the discrimination as a health professional, but she was a skilled healer. And she rose above her colleagues in critical nursing care. She often told me that if she'd had the opportunities that we have, she would have been a doctor. She often told me, get your education because that is something they can never take away. My father was a high school teacher, an English teacher. He attended Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He later decided to go into juvenile delinquency work and became a probation officer for the California Youth Authority, and later a parole agent. It was through listening to my father that I developed empathy for young people, mostly young men at the time, for making poor choices, but having the ability to change things for the good when someone believes in you. So I have a beautiful daughter, Ashley, who turned 27.
Oh.
She's a Libra. So I'm a Gemini, so we balance each other. I'm really proud of her. She is currently working for Genentech as a reimbursement claims specialist. So I'm learning a lot about the whole healthcare industry from the pharmaceutical side of things. And by many means, I'm very proud of her. She graduated from UC Merced in 2016, which seems like years ago now. And she graduated as a material science engineer, but she has been just heartbroken that she couldn't get a job in her field. And I kept encouraging her to keep looking. So she ended up at Bath and Body Works. And she kept saying to me, Mom, people keep coming and asking me, you know, do you have a degree, don't you? And I share that with them. And she's like, why do they keep asking me that? I said, because of the way you carry yourself. You're well spoken. You're a good customer service. You care about people. And so when she finally got the job at Genentech, it was online. She never even went into a personal interview. She did it online. They hired her the next day.
Wow.
And she said, I was selling Bath and Body Works products, and now I'm working for Genentech. I said, transferable skills.
Yes, right.
And the good news is because she's almost been there for 2 years, she actually saw a position for material science engineer a couple of weeks ago, and so she's applied for it. And so the other thing I said to her was, you're inside now. And so once you get inside of an organization, you have access to jobs before they're sent out to the general public. So I'm glad to know that I've been able to mentor and coach her as a parent, because we don't have all the answers all the time, but my experience in life has helped guide her. And so I'm very proud of her.
Awesome.
And my husband, Larry Jenkins, is a sweetheart. We actually met professionally back in 1981. He was a recruiter. I went to him looking for a job. We stayed friends. Several years after that, we both divorced and were available. So we dated 3 intense years. And then we decided we were in different places in our lives. So we decided to end, but as friends. And we always stayed in touch with one another. And so in 2010, I was driving to the DeYoung Museum, or actually I was driving to a meeting on Fulton, and he was driving to the DeYoung Museum.
What?
I saw him, I picked up my phone, I'm like, Larry, where are you going? Call me. He called me 3 days later, a little slow, but he said, you know, you have a different phone number. I'm like, yeah, I just got a new phone. So he says, well, what are you doing Wednesday night? I said, nothing. He invited me to Yoshi's, which had been our place before, to see Esperanza Spalding. That was 2010. he said to me, I let you go last time. I'm never going to let you go again. And in 2011, we got married in Barbados.
Awesome.
So that's a full circle story with us. So it's
That's right.
And the funny part of that, my father, who passed in 2015, when he found out that we were back together, and Larry asked for my father's permission to marry.
Wow.
Dad said to me, well, I'm not going to come to the wedding because every time I give her away, she comes back. I'm happy to say, my father left in 2015. He was not at the wedding, but he didn't have to give me away again because we're happily married. We celebrated our 9th wedding anniversary on November 23rd.
Awesome. Awesome. Oh my God, that is a fairy tale. And you know, divine time, divine order, because you end up getting another phone. So he didn't have your new number. Right. So by you all passing each other and you seeing him and got the opportunity to call him, then it was a connection that, well, you know, you never know why it is important for you to be where you are at a certain time in your life. Well, Hollis, and we want to thank you for sharing that information. So tell us about your passion.
So my passion from the time I was 5 years old was I started playing the piano. Oh, my parents bought me a little tiny piano. And when they realized that I just loved it, they actually bought me a real piano. So music has always fed my spirit and my soul. I like to play it just for myself. Just calm and just embrace life. Music, especially during this time, during the pandemic, has really been healing. And even when I listen to certain songs, I can think about different times in my life, and it brings me back to joy. So that's been a passion. And I've been allowed to use that passion when I've worked with schools, when I've worked with children, in the church. And so it's been nourishing to me.
Awesome. Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm also passionate about being a mom. Mm-hmm. I only wanted one child, and I was
and you got that one child.
Yeah. And I prayed to God to have a girl because I wouldn't know what to do with a boy, and so He granted my wish. And I am passionate about my husband because part of that story that makes it so amazing, we have a history. And even though we went our separate ways for that larger period of time, we remained friends. And so we've shared with each other that as we grow old together, we can actually reminisce about things that we did a long time ago and things that we're doing now. And because of that deep, enduring friendship, we actually have fun together and enjoy one another. And we often laugh saying, can you imagine couples that are not really having a good time being stuck together right now? So it's been a lot of fun.
Wow. You know, and thank you again for sharing that. You know, I do want to ask you this question. When you hear the words seeds, what comes to your mind?
Fertile soil. And the faith of a mustard seed. Mm-hmm. In fact, my mom bought me a charm bracelet, and one of the charms I always cherished was a mustard seed because it's so tiny, but it grows into something so big.
Wow, that's awesome. And as fertile, Fertile ground. So that leads right into my next question. And my next question is, why did you choose your profession, or did your profession choose you?
Okay. So, I told you that my mom was a licensed vocational nurse. So my mother wanted me to be the doctor that she didn't become. And I wanted to please her. So I didn't feel I was good at math and science, but that was mostly because during that time, my white teachers didn't encourage girls to pursue math or science. I was good at English and social studies, which are the two areas that my father loved. So I eventually convinced myself that I wanted to be a lawyer. I gave up on the dream of being a doctor. Although I will say, once I got teachers that actually understood me and encouraged me, I actually was pretty good as a math and science teacher, or I was good in math and science. I did go to UC Berkeley. And then I actually was accepted into Santa Clara University Law School. And I'll never forget, because my counselor in high school, when I shared with her that I wanted to be a lawyer, looked at me and said, "Why would you want to be a lawyer? Black people don't become lawyers." Wow. And I looked at her and said, "And when I go to law school, I'm going to bring you my acceptance letter." And I did that. Brought it back to her and said, "This is the person you said Black people don't go to law school. I just got accepted in Santa Clara." I did attend law school, but the parts of law where you help people don't happen until you pass the bar. So I had a very challenging time in law school because I'm a people person. And I couldn't understand, when do you learn how to be a counselor at law? When do you learn how to help people? And all I was told was, "Oh, you don't do that until after you pass the bar exam." So law school for me was a 3-year course in bar review. And that really didn't excite me. But I also went to work for the second largest law firm in San Francisco. And about halfway through, I sought the counsel of some of the attorneys there and said, "I'm really struggling with law school and I'm thinking about dropping." Half said, "Well, you're halfway through. That's crazy. You should go on and finish." But the other half said, "If you have any doubt that this is what you want to do, take a break. Why get into debt for law school?" And I was paying for law school myself, "if you're not sure." So I did. I followed that advice. I dropped. My parents were very upset. My mother was more upset probably than my father. But I used the law, and I actually went into Golden Gate University and pursued a degree in information management. And so I started working in corporate America. And I eventually got recruited to a management consulting firm in Chicago. So it was a major shift for me. I left my parents and moved to Chicago. I was working on major litigation cases, and we had hundreds of temporary employees that were working for us. And there were a lot of employees that would come and say, "Sister, can you get me a job?" And I'd explain to them, the reason I have a job is because of the college I went to. And they don't hire people just off the street for jobs. This isn't that type of job. But I started questioning, these are adults making minimum wage, poorly educated. Some couldn't even fill out a job application. Some of them had families to support. And I was trying to figure out, how can people make such little money in Chicago. And I started researching what was happening with the schools in Chicago. And I realized the children in Chicago had been left behind. And it was at that point I shifted, went back to school, got my master's degree at DePaul in curriculum development, and decided to become a teacher in Cabrini Green, which is one of the most notorious housing projects in the city of Chicago. And I have never been happier because that move for me helped me give back. It put me in touch with the world that my father introduced me to, of young people needing someone to believe in them.
Yes.
Barbara, my best story was I loved when Facebook finally came onto the horizon, because I found one of my students in the first year of teaching, 4th grade.
Wow.
And he said, I have been looking for you for so long because you made me feel so special on my birthday. For my students, I would give them the little Burger King crown and decorate their chair on their birthday. And he said, that birthday, you made me feel more special than my own parents.
Wow.
But I used to hate you because you used to mark up all of my papers with the red. But now I am the CEO of my own publishing company in New York City.
Wow.
I now know the power of the red pen.
My.
And I cried because your first year of teaching, you don't think you've made a difference in anybody's life. You go home and feel like you haven't done anything. And I actually used to cry and call my dad and say, I'm not doing anything with these kids. And he said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Stop talking so much to your students and listen to them. And they will tell you what they need. And that simple advice, when I started listening to my kids, these kids were telling me about the drugs they were exposed to. And I said, you're chemists, you're pharmacists. What you're talking about, you have a gift that if you go to school and pursue that, you can make tons of money legitimately. It changed my whole perspective of how to reach them. And the other advice my father gave me was, you have values, and they can acquire those values, but you have to meet them where they are.
Absolutely.
Simple. And those were just, it changed the whole dynamic of how I reached my kids. And by listening to them, one of the things that I used to struggle with was if I was trying to introduce math, a math concept, everything I learned to become a teacher was not working. But when I listened to my kids, they were always talking about, he's got my money, they got my money, you better have my money. And I'm like, if I teach them about money, then I can teach them math. And so no matter what I was doing, I used money as a way to start the conversation, and they were brilliant. It changed the whole dynamic of me teaching them, because I found something that they could actually embrace and were familiar with.
Right.
It just changed their whole world. So
that's right. Well, with that, teaching them also the value of who they were and who they are and the value of money. So I just want to ask you, how important is that word value to you? And what are your values?
My values are hard work, love, loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
um, leadership, commitment.
All right now. All of what we need to do to be successful in life. We need all of those skills. We need all of those things to be an actual part of our actual lives. And with that, what are you doing for self-care? Since we're talking about values.
So probably 5 years ago, I was a avid Zumba person,
Mm-hmm.
but I could never get to my classes because my work was so intense.
Right.
So I actually signed up for a health coach through my employer at the time who recommended yoga. And I used to laugh, oh, yoga, that's so whatever. But I embraced yoga because he turned me on to a website out of Canada called doyogawithme.com. It's free. And I started doing yoga. And that is how I have done my self-care for the most part, because it grounds me. I'm actually blessed to have a room that I have put off limits to the rest of my family. It is my yoga room. I even have a sign. In fact, I'm in this room now, and I have a sign on the door that when yoga session is in, it goes up on my door so I don't get any interruptions. My parents, I have like an altar table here. So I feel like my ancestors and my spirits are here with me. I can ground and pray. And the other value I have to say I should have started with first is my faith, because my spiritual life is very important to me. And it also is a high value, trying to be Christ-like.
That's right.
The yoga has really kept me grounded. And I've also found, in terms of self-care, because when I was working, I was constantly rushing. My self-care now is to just slow down. And so I'm enjoying cooking. I always did, but I just take time to prepare the food. And it's like a love fest, because I actually enjoy the preparation. It's not the ends versus the means. It's just, I enjoy doing it, not because it's a chore, but I actually enjoy it now.
Right.
I can plan, meals, and just really it's an act of love to my husband and my daughter when she comes over. So yeah, that's my self-care right now. And of course, listening.
Well, awesome. And to lead over into something else I wanted to ask, and the richness of our ancestors, the spirit, and you talking about the spirit of our ancestors and the spirit of our parents. Who the ancestor that calls on you, or you call on to do the work you're doing, or to center yourself, or who is there anybody in particular that just resonates in your spirit? Mine's is Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. I mean, those are the ones. And it's crazy because the work that we do, it's a part of what they done, what they have done for us. So I draw on them when I am doing my self-care, and I am like in search of, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing, or what should I be doing? I call on them. So is there anybody in particular who you call on or you resonate with?
Zora Neale Hurston.
All right now.
When I was at Berkeley, I took a course in African American women. And my professor passed, but she was amazing. And she introduced me to the work of Zora Neale Hurston. And I love to write. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's one of my goals. I would like to write my memoirs. So this is very and Zora's zest for life and how she embraced life and wrote about it always inspired me. And her beautiful love stories about our people and the resilience just always spoke to me, and embracing life and never giving up. So she feeds my spirit.
All right. That's awesome. So with that, what is the importance of sisterhood to you or to women? What do you think about sisterhood? How important is that?
So Barbara, sisterhood, is really important to me because I have to share this story.
Go ahead.
When I first met you, it was at your parents' bakery because I was working at St. Paul the Shipwreck at the time.
Yes.
And a musician kept bugging me about pie. And he wanted a pie. He wanted, was it peach cobbler? I think it was peach cobbler. And I came into the shop and I met you. Mm-hmm. And there was something about you that we hugged and we said, we're going to do something together. Great. And I never forgot that. Now, my family, I had family in Bayview Hunters Point. So, I had been there a lot. I don't know why we had never run into each other.
Right.
But that day, my aunt lived on Lucy Street. So my parents used to come to 3rd Street to do all of their shopping on Friday night, get their fish, but we had never met. And it was something about that. And we're both Geminis, but there's something in that embrace and familiarity that it felt like you were my blood sister and we had known each other forever. Mm-hmm. I don't think that happens by accident.
No.
It was almost like we had known each other in another life. Mm-hmm. But we stayed in touch from that day. And we are still
together. It's been, okay, I don't think I had, did I have any kids then? Or maybe I had my son. So it's been over 26 years.
That was 2000. I was at Shipwreck in 2002 is when they closed because it became Bayview the next year. So that was 2002.
So that would be 18 years. Am I right? Or did I get to, okay. Look.
What did I say?
I said
that's 28 years.
Oh. Well,
Please, Daddy.
Thank you very much. But you're absolutely right. It's something when you can encounter with someone or people that you can feel free to be yourself, and sisterhood, that was to me, it was a connection of, like you said, it was spirits intertwining together. And it just gave, it was freedom. It was so, it's hard to describe, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember when you said that, I remember coming around the ice cream, we were, the ice cream machine and giving you a hug and you giving me a hug and saying those words. And it was history. It's been history. I tell people, you are in a really good sisterhood of friendship with someone when you don't have to worry about calling them all the time or whatever the case may be. When you see them, it's just like when you never stop seeing them, and you never stop the conversation. Still, it just genuinely intertwines, and it keeps going, because some people you be like, oh, I ain't seen you and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, even though you haven't, I still been thinking about you. You've been thinking about me. We're still together. It's nothing, this life sometimes happen, but the beauty of it is that you have the freedom of being able to be yourself and knowing that that's my sister, no matter where she is. You know, it doesn't matter. She can go across the country or the world. She's my sister. Okay. Go right ahead.
And there's two other things I'd like to share with you. So
go right ahead.
When I grew up, my school was in Lakeview. Mm-hmm. And I have a group of childhood women that we've stayed in touch with. And so part of my struggle when I lived in Chicago was that history part. I had an amazing group of sisters in Chicago, but they didn't know me as a child. And so I always felt like during the holidays, there was a part of the story that was missing.
Oh, yeah.
But I've stayed in touch with the sisters that I embrace in Chicago. So whenever I go back to Chicago, it's like a reunion, like weird blood.
Yes.
But when I came back to San Francisco, my mom passed in 97, and then I returned in 98 with my daughter to live with my dad. I went back to St. Paul the Shipwreck, which had been my church before I moved to Chicago. And a woman got up to speak. Her name is Rose, and she's been real involved with foster care. And she was making an announcement about the need for Black adoptions. And I sat there and I'm like, that's Rose. I ran up to her afterwards and said, Rose, Hollis, you're back? Just the group of us gets together every 3 months and we eat. And I'm going to invite you to the next gathering. Okay. And so from 1998 until now, my group of elementary ladies always get together. We've all had children now, and we have this like reunion. We won't do it because of COVID, but I think the last one we had was, I know we had gumbo, so I think it was in February, right before everything shut down. Mm-hmm. And so we've reconnected. So sisterhood is very important because that is how we continue our stories and our legacy. And the power of the elementary ladies group is because we've all had children, they get to see their moms. Yes. And we share the stories about how we knew each other when we were little kids. And they get a sense of, you actually were little ones. You weren't all right. And I think that's important because I'm hoping that this pandemic will bring people's families back together. When I told you that part of my parents being from the South, they never let me lose the connection to my family in the South. Even though I was a city girl, I could call my aunt in Louisiana and she could tell me the stories. My grandmother and I weren't really close, but on my father's side, his family was. And they would share their stories, and those are important. And I'm hoping that, you know, for generations that are all in the same household, they actually start talking again.
Right. And you're so absolutely true. That's what I feel a part in. Lord knows we, pray for the families and the loved ones that have been lost during this COVID-19. But I believe that it has happened too for us to get back to family, to get back to relationships, to get back to talking, as you said, with one another. And this is what the The Juneteenth 196 was about and is about making sure we keep our stories and the legacy of our people alive. So you all telling us your stories is just like, oh my God, it's a breath of fresh air. Other people will get the opportunity to hear your story. And then you got folks all over the world. And you know, one thing I remember, you had made mention and you said you went to a funeral and you said, wow, in the reading the obituary. And you came back to me and you said it was in some kind of conversation we was having. And you say, you know, well, this person doing all of this stuff and no one knows until they are passed away. That was one of the keys that stuck in my head. And it's like, oh no, the stories will be told by us before the people leave this earth, if we can help it, you know. So man, for you being able to share that with me, and it was a pinpoint in my mind. And then how we were able to now to do the virtual Juneteenth, it was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what it was about. So I'm so excited. And then again, in sisterhood, in conversation, if we never communicated or talked, we wouldn't even, I am a firm believer of that God brings you together for a reason. It's totally up to you to figure out why and when, and don't trip out if you won't do it at the time you say you're going to do it. It will happen because you came into each other's life for that reason. That I'm a firm believer in that. So with that, just keeping in our minds, remembering how our ancestors celebrated us and thought about us and thought about what they had to do for us is so important. And that's another reason why we're doing this Juneteenth 196. The stories we are griots and griots. And this is a part of our African-American storytelling, is telling our stories. And for the next generation to hear and know about what we've done and we are doing, and to keep it paving forward. You know, I go ahead. Just get excited.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I was just going to share. So I've been running a nonprofit for the last 3 years, teaching kindergarten through second graders how to read.
Yes. And
every February, I would sit with my little kids and ask them, who are your heroes? They would start reciting, you know, Harriet Tubman and, you know, George Washington Carver. And I looked at them and said, you don't have to go that far back.
That's right.
Who do you live with that are your heroes? Who's in your neighborhood that are your heroes? Who's at your church that are your heroes? And they would start naming people. Those are your heroes. And you need to talk to them and find out their stories while you can still ask them questions. The same seed I planted with you that day when I talked about the obituary, I shared with little kids. And it resonated with them. They're like, yeah, Dr. Hollis, yeah. And I charged them, said, go home and ask your parents who their heroes are and start talking to them about it. That's what teachers need to be doing. All this conversation about including African-American curriculum, Latinx curriculum, Indigenous people curriculum. If you're a good teacher, you will give your students the passion to learn that history for themselves, because if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. And I don't need a curriculum guide to teach that. When I was teaching, that is what I taught my kids. Your story started with you.
Yes.
The concept.
To go into the last question, and this leads right into what we were just talking about. what would you like to create, share, or give to the world for your legacy?
So in this period of awakening around education, which is my passion, there are two stakeholder groups I want to focus on. Parents and teachers. So for parents, parents are a child's first teacher. I want to move into intergenerational healing. The elders in my church taught young people about their history. This needs to be restored.
That's right.
And the people in my life did not wait until February, the shortest month of the year, to talk about Black people. They talked about it the entire year. My role models outside of my own family were the women in the church, the way they dressed, the way they carried themselves, the way they cooked. In fact, when my daughter got old enough to finally listen to my advice of learning how to cook, there is a Black cookbook that I gave her, Spoon Bread and Strawberry Wine.
All right, now.
Is the legacy of the Darden family, who collected all of their recipes. And basically it's African-American cooking. But I gave it to her because my mother was the type, when you ask her how to make something, oh, you put a little bit of this in, a little bit of that. She never measured anything.
Right, no measuring nothing.
It's hard to try to learn how to cook from somebody that says, well, you put a little bit of this, a little bit, like, mother, like, and do you have like a measuring cup? Like, I have no idea what that means. But I found that cookbook and it was my mother's recipes.
Wow.
Only there, it actually told you how many ingredients you needed to make whatever it was. So that is really important. Parents have so many gifts to share with their children, especially young parents. I am concerned about the younger generation having children. Children are gifts. Children don't ask to come here, but once they're here, they're your responsibility. And so you can't rely on the outside world to teach them. When I first announced to my mom that I was pregnant, she talked to my daughter in my tummy over the phone. Yeah. I was living in Chicago at the time, and she was here. She talked to her and sang to her every day. Came to Chicago when my daughter was born, and my daughter immediately knew her because of her voice. It was amazing to me. That bond is important. And so you just have to really be careful as a parent what you are passing on to your children, because they're watching and they're listening.
Wow.
And then the second part of my legacy is teaching. There's an art to teaching. It's important for children to know their history and where they come from. Teaching is an art, and it's not a job.
Yeah.
People that go into the profession with the mindset that it's a job are in the wrong field, especially now. The social emotional
learning
trauma that our kids are dealing with right now is hard. And it is the spirit connection to children that allows you to be able to teach them. but they can't focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic if their hearts are broken.
Mm.
And so I have seen synergy between Black and brown children. This racial hatred,
Yeah.
something that comes from adults.
Yeah.
But children in their purest form are loving towards each other. They want to help each other. And the adults in their space need to nurture that. But it starts from the home. And if it's not in the home, then the extended family wrap around the children and support each other, including the adults. I think teachers need to see their students, but they also need to understand children don't need saviors. They just need someone that will believe in them and will take the time to understand the root causes of their struggles, their trials, and their triumphs. It breaks my heart to see kids that are constantly reprimanded and sent out of class because of behavior problems. In terms of legacy, what I'm hoping when I reimagine what education looks like going forward is that this pandemic will level the playing field.
Yes.
If you are teaching your children, you can't put them in the hallway because they're a behavior problem. If you are a good teacher, your students are engaged and they reconnect with the joy of learning. Our kids are curious. Our kids are scientists. Our kids are mathematicians. They're amazing little people. But what's been lost is they hate school because they don't see themselves in what they're learning. I pray that we can make that connection again and ask students to look at what they're learning and teach them to understand why they're learning it. And have them insert themselves in whatever it is you're talking about. Because if they can see it, then they can believe it. And that's the legacy I want to learn. I want to pass all of my institutional learning from the beginning, when I thought I was going to do one career and then shifted into something else because God was moving me in a different direction. But the lesson I learned from that is life is not a straight road. It's a winding road. And you can think you can decide what you want to do, but it's okay to change because that's life. That's what life is. It's embracing the changes and growing. And so I just want to pass that on to the next generation of teachers to empower them to be the best versions of themselves that they can be, and to remember that these children are diamonds in the rough. And if you allow them to see and believe in themselves, there is greatness there, and therefore greatness for our people. So that's what I want my legacy to be.
Wow. Well, Dr. Hollis, B-H Brilliant Minds Project, Inc. will continue to invite folks to celebrate the Juneteenth 196. How we came up with Juneteenth 196 is this. If you were to count June the 19th to December the 31st, it's 196 days. And that's how we came up with Juneteenth 196. And this is our special 2020 edition for the 13th year of the Juneteenth. The thing we came up with this year would be, we are the breath of our ancestors. We would never break because we are history shakers and makers. And this is in honor of acknowledging that Black culture, Black minds, Black breath, and Black lives do matter. And we are saying it loud because we're Black and proud. And we definitely want to thank our sponsorer. If we we wouldn't be able to do this, and that is the Win-Rose Fund of the Common Council Foundation. Win-Rose Fund of the Common Council Foundation. We want to thank them for allowing us to do our virtual Juneteenth celebration. And all of these sessions will be uploaded to our website, and it is www.B-HBrilliantMinds.org. www.B-HBrilliantMinds.org. And if you are and have participated in this personal interview, you give the B.H. Brilliant Minds Project, Inc. the authorization to record you, your voice, your comments, and take your picture. So again, Dr. Hollis Pierce-Jenkins, we say thank you, and we are so honored and grateful to have this opportunity to interview you today. And tell the hubby we said thank you for allowing you to have this time with us, because we know family time is important. And again, tell him we say happy anniversary, because we know that you guys just celebrated the 9th year anniversary. And last parting words.
Love, peace, and soul.
All right.